So again, this is what they're using. This is one of the main ones they're using, the Orion cube as they call it, or the cube. And also it's being used with looking glass. But what's going on with 2012? Well, here's another very interesting thing. Dan Burish, who I've had multiple discussions with privately, and we're actually going to have an event that we're speaking at together at Caltech, which is later in March. And I'm going to have that on my website if you're interested. It's going to be local. My website is divinecosmos.com. And we're going to talk about all this stuff there to some degree, but it's mostly going to be on his research with biology, which we'll get into later. But anyway, we have multiple parallel futures that we can choose. And what he found was there was a treaty that they were trying to do with the extraterrestrials that was codenamed Tau 9. And in the Tau 9 treaty, they had a line item in the treaty that was intended to share his biology technology with the ETs. And that technology was able to reproduce the original seed of all life on Earth, which the ETs wanted to use to be able to heal their own DNA because they believe that they're human lineage. So what he found out was that these other beings apparently had contacted him and said, you cannot tamper with the tree of life. You can look at it, you can admire it, but you can't mess with it. The tree of life is the actual source code of our DNA. So what was happening was they were looking into the future, and he took the negative visual that he got from the alien, from the ascended being that came to him and warned him about the tree of life. He held that image in his mind of what would happen to the Earth in 2012 if this were allowed to happen. And the image inside the looking glass immediately shifted to the apocalyptic vision. So he was able to prove by doing this that you can determine the outcome of what this thing shows you by your conscious focus. So this is, 2012 literally does represent create your own reality time. It has everything to do with what do you expect is going to happen. This is where thoughts becoming reality really takes on a whole new meaning in a way that you've never heard of before. Now again, I also had a contact with a man named Daniel. You can hear about the story on the free 3.5-hour Project Camelot video that's on my website. You can go look it up. I met this guy in New York. I was stranded at the airport because of the snow. I ended up going to a Denny's. It was the only place that was open. I had brought the Montauk book with me for some reason, even though I thought it was all just a bunch of crap. And this dude walks by in like biker gear and a big burly beard. Big guy. So you like that stuff, huh? You like that Montauk? I said, oh my gosh, this is all a bunch of crap. He says, you know, I used to work for Preston Nichols. What? Preston Nichols is one of the authors of the book. And I just started laughing. I said, look, there's no way that you worked at Montauk, because Montauk is a joke. It's fake. Well, he kept on talking, and the next thing you know, he sat down, and we stayed up all night, and I had like scribbles all over the placemats. And I mean, this guy, and it's a shame that he doesn't want to go public, because I'll tell you, he's got an amazing amount of information. And I didn't go into it very much yesterday. Some people asked me to go into it a little bit more, so I will do that. You have to understand that there is a basic New World Order, an Illuminati, if you will, which is primarily run by the Rothschild family. The Rothschild means red shield, which is all kinds of esoteric symbolism we could go into, which I don't have the time for. The Rothschilds financed Stalin and the takeover of Russia, the Bolshevik Revolution, 1917. They have financed the French Revolution. They financed World War II. They financed Hitler, and they were financing the U.S. So they believe in order out of chaos. You fund both sides of a war, and whichever side wins, you got their vote, because you're their paymaster. You've given them their money. You control their financial supply, which means you can control the government. Okay? And you profit no matter what. Right. And also what happens is that the war stimulates the economy, so you get much more infrastructure and much more buildings coming out of it. That's why, for example, Ford Motor Company was building tank plants in Germany, which is why Hitler's Wehrmacht had the tanks. It was from Ford. When American bombers bombed Ford's tank plants in Germany, Ford personally repaid Hitler so he could rebuild the tank plants faster. Boeing actually was shipping, this has been documented, was shipping passenger airliners to South America, which were then sent to Africa, where they ripped the seats out and turned them into Hitler's bomber fleet. That was Boeing. These are American corporations. The whole idea of these big wars is a joke. It's a setup, it's a game that's played to play off the opposites against each other in the hopes of synthesizing a new world order where we all kind of synthesize. That's why Democrat and Republican is a joke. Okay? They want certain aspects of the conservative Republican Party. They want, for example, the cultish religious aspect, but it's not Christianity. That's why the liberal side is all about being open and being free and not having any of these traditional shackles on you. Because what they ultimately want is a racist society. They're very racist, and they're interested in a new world order which is run by a Luciferian philosophy. Now, this is very disturbing sounding stuff, but they actually believe that since they have the secret tradition that goes back to Atlantis, and that they've been persecuted for thousands and thousands of years by various people, nobody persecuted them as badly as the Roman government through the Catholic Christian Church. They were tortured, they were killed, so they came to the natural conclusion, you can understand anybody would have done this under the circumstances. What do you think they would choose? They would say, okay, whatever God these guys think is God, that's not the right one, because he's stringing us out on the rack, he's torturing us, he's killing us. Therefore, whoever the Christian church says is the bad guy is the good guy. Okay, wait a minute. Lucifer is the brightest light, the brightest angel in heaven, right? And he's the one that got tossed out of heaven. Well, maybe he got tossed out of heaven because he was too cool, right? Because everybody else in there was a bunch of corrupt shysters. Well, this is actually what the most powerful people in the world think. And they are a fundamentalist religion just like any of the others. They still believe this weird stuff. They follow these teachings. They actually buy into this, okay? So that's why it's weird, because you see these political parties that are siding with religious fundamentalist Christianity, and they actually do have a fundamentalist religion, but it's the mirror opposite. So their energy vibrates with each other, and that's why they work together so well. Don't forget, of course, that Hitler was also running on a Christian platform. And who was Hitler's main ally in World War II in Europe? Italy. Italy is the Vatican. The Pope and all that stuff was supporting Nazi Germany, okay? Because it was in the Vatican, which was in Italy, which was Mussolini. So, the reason why I'm telling you all this is not for you to have a fatalistic sense of doom. It's to also enlighten you to the fact that this is going on, that it's real, and that the Nazis were very, very proactive in rebuilding all of the ancient secrets that had been lost. Because for the first time, they had a world power government that could go out and militarily by force invade places that were being kept under lock and key with heavy guard, and go in and steal the artifacts and the technologies that would allow them to rebuild their so-called master race and all this stuff that they're so into. Okay? What's that?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, exactly. So, what do you think happens when a UFO crashes in World War II, and the people who financed Nazi Germany, once it collapsed, they're looking for as much technology, as much goodies as they can get their hands on. So what do you think they're going to do when these UFOs crash? They're going to want to rip out everything from those UFOs imaginable and reverse engineer it and make it into something they can use. So what's the first thing that they go for? They take out the chair. Because these UFOs, you're sitting there in the chair and you say you want to go somewhere, you meditate on it, and a vortex opens up in front of the ship and you fly through it, and you pop through a wormhole and you end up somewhere else.